Welcome back to another episode of The Road Less Traveled. I am so incredibly excited because this isn't just the first time. This is the second time Lior with Blanket is coming on and changing the industry. This company, I do truly feel, is changing the industry of property managers. But not only that, his company and him changes any life they touch. And I truly believe that. And so I really want to dive into, since this is the second episode, we want to dive into really the raising funds, which so many people struggle or even know where to start with. And so first, I want to open up because since not everybody's maybe listened to the first one, how did you even start or decide you wanted to start this company?
There are two reasons. One is like the more personal one, and which is sort of like I would say, I want to call it our secret mission in Blanket, but it's like sort of like our big why that really motivates us to do, way more than we sometimes physically can, and when we're tired and, and don't have a lot of power to do things. And the other one is really, the opportunity that we saw and the problem that we identified that we were able to solve. So I'll start with the first one, and it really goes back to my personal story. I was born and raised in Israel, but my entire family came from Ukraine, and they moved to Israel back in 1990. It was right after the Soviet Union broke. So a lot of Jewish families who, experienced a lot of anti-Semitism and a lot of difficulties just with the actual, communist regime that was before that. The moment they had the opportunity, because they couldn't really leave the Soviet Union before it broke. So on the first opportunity they had, just wanted to run away, and all of my family moved to Israel. And the issue was that people who had any type of, even if they had any pension, which you didn't have back in the Soviet Union, so people came in pretty much with nothing. So my family came into Israel with like literally, my parents with like $200 in their pocket. That's what we had. Coming into a foreign country, you don't know the language, you don't know anything, and you don't have any sort of like financial, I would say, foundation to start with. And this whole thing came to me as I first learned about it when I was, I would say, around 16 years old, after I read that book of Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And I learned about this concept that is called pension, and I didn't know what a pension was. So I asked my grandparents, like, what's a pension? And they told me something that we don't have. And I was like, okay, so, but like, really, what does that mean? So I understood that this is what you are planning to rely on. Again, in the States, it's like your 401k, but that's what you rely on when you retire. So to me, it was like, oh man, so you're going to retire when you cannot work anymore and you wouldn't have money? Like, how would that work? So to me, this was like the first thing that also got me really excited about getting into real estate, because I understood that this is the way that I'll be able to help my grandparents actually retire financially safe by at least, giving them one rental property that they will be able to live off, the rental income. So that was sort of like my biggest why of getting into real estate. But that's also the big why behind Blanket, because we've understood something very important. Most mom and pop investors and landlords and owners that have just one property, two properties, or three properties, a lot of them are really banking on using those rental properties and that real estate to retire financially safe, right? And even if they have 401k or whatever, it's just another way for them to really secure their financial freedom to some extent, or their ability just to retire with dignity. And we understood that in this world of single family rentals, there are no asset managers, there are no investment managers that can help these folks to really make the right decisions. Now, I bet everybody's listening here probably has more than a few owners that probably did a lot of mistakes with real estate, bought the wrong property, got into the wrong deal, or a lot of these things that could have been prevented if they would just ask you as the real estate professional, right? And because there is no investment manager in our industry, the only one who has a vested interest in the success of your portfolio, of your properties, is the one who is actually in the long term, so like journey with you, which is your property manager. The agent that you bought a property from does not care about that, just wants another deal. The lender that maybe gave you a mortgage to buy a specific property also It's a very transactional relationship, but your property manager is the one who really has a vested interest in your well-being. The better your properties will be, the more money your property manager will make. The more properties you'll have, the more money your property manager will make. So there's a very long-term alignment of interest here. So we understood that if we'll be able to empower property managers to have all the tools they need to act as an investment manager, eventually they will be able to help our loved ones, our parents, our grandparents, to give them the right advice so they wouldn't do any mistakes, so they will buy the right properties with the right sort of like structure of a deal or what's needed, so they will be able to retire financially safe. That's really the big, I would say, personal mission that we have at Blanket, and my personal like why I even got into real estate. Now that correlates to the second reason, which is again, what are we even doing in Blanket? So with Blanket, we found we found a great way to connect our big why to the business purposes and the business challenges that we have in the property management space, which is again owner churn. We're losing a lot of clients because in many cases maybe we're not living up to their expectation, or we don't provide them with everything they need. And the asset management part of it, the ability to be this more of a trusted advisor rather than just another rent collector, is the thing that can really solve that problem, but also fulfill that purpose of helping our loved ones retire financially safe. So connecting all those together, this was really, the big why we found a Blanket.
This is why I think you are changing the industry, because the first time I really met you was when I spoke on stage, and I'm like, asset management over property management. And you got to understand that really the number one thing is the bottom line to the owner, whether it's appreciation or cash flow or whatever, it is the bottom line. But the most important thing is that people have to understand how to analyze properties and what that property is worth and what it does for them. And what's interesting is when we talked, that's what your whole software does. And I was like, there's no one else in the industry who's really talking about this. And I've been talking about this for years. Like, it's asset management over property management. And when you deal with a client, like, you have to foresee the issues before they do. You have to understand what that property's for. What's the purpose? What's the bottom line? If they're underwater, so are they willing to go after appreciation? So I loved your concept of this. But when you started this business, did you even think about bootstrapping it? Or did you go, oh, I'm going to raise funds right off the bat? What was your decision making on that?
It was definitely raising funds because my dream was always to build a tech company. And before that, I wasn't in tech. I was in real estate. I was working with a big real estate investment operator. We were doing a lot of, again, single family rental properties and funds and built to rent properties and funds. And to me, it was inevitable to build a VC-backed company, because to build what we built today takes a lot of money, like a lot of money. Like, I think one of the things that a lot of our clients are surprised is that we're probably the only company out there, a vendor, that's also paying on a per unit basis. Like, we ourselves pay per unit, because to enable this whole thing, we buy a lot of data. And you cannot really get to the ability to provide these tools and to provide these insights without spending a lot of money, both on, maintaining the platform, but also building it. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, the investor dashboard, the thing that everybody knows in our industry that we provide. At first we thought, 3-4 months and we'll be done with the investor dashboard. Like, we are still working on it today, because trying to take all the, I would say, the jungle of issues that we have in our accounting in the different property management softwares and making sense of it is almost mission impossible. Like, and this is what we're doing. We're working with all property management softwares. We're taking all the GL accounts, and we're somehow being able to standardize it, because each property manager
does it differently.
Names every GL account different. A lot of GL accounts are not even active. Some of them were categorized, in the wrong way. So how do you take all of this and you make it standardized across a software platform without just being a service company? So this is where like a lot of, technology and AI comes into play. So this is just even that feature, like just the investor dashboard is a crazy project by itself.
What I love
really build it out of it.
Yeah, what I love that you said is that you thought it would take like 3 months, and y'all are still in this process of building the dashboard. How many years have you been in business now?
We've been since the end of 2022.
Okay, so what I
Like,
love that you said, and you were open about this, because most of the time when people are like, oh, I'm going to start a SaaS company, they're like, oh, it's going to be easy. The problem is industry is changing so fast. The SaaS company has to change so fast, which takes so much money. And 9 times out of 10, people don't understand how much money it takes to build a software company. And that's what it is essentially. So when you decided to go, okay, I'm going to raise funds because I know I'm going to need the amount of funds. How did you decide in the first round what kind you were doing? You weren't going to do bootstrap it. Did you do seed, series A? What did you decide to do on raising funds?
you don't have a lot of options when you're raising money for a startup. You can either raise what is called friends and family money,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like, from folks, friends, and something that is actually very common in our industry. We have a lot of folks that are invested in different companies. So this is what you call your friends and family round. This is normally the most easy, but also the most risky part. And because there's still no company, and even if there's still no product market fit. There's no sort of like risk adjustment because you pay for like a promise of
Mm-hmm.
this company potentially raising something. Because when you invest, like as a friend, into a software company, if that company wouldn't be able to eventually raise an actual sort of like VC background, you're going to lose all your money because the money that you always raise is normally backed against what it's called a safe agreement. Okay, safe agreement, it's literally how it sounds. It's simple agreement for future equity.
Mm-hmm.
That's the initials, which is a much faster mechanism to raise funds. You don't need to go through like the full legal paperwork. It's like one relatively simple agreement, and then you can just raise money from friends and family. And that safe agreement normally gives you like certain maybe beneficial terms for the future round. For example, if I go and raise money from friends and family through a safe agreement, that safe agreement can, for example, say that we are giving you 20% discount, meaning that if you invested $100,000, so in the next round, it's like you'll get $120,000. Pretty much that's what it means, and I'm oversimplifying it.
Which is good
And
because
they're like,
this needs to be oversimplified for people
yeah,
because there's so much behind this that it gets so confusing for people and they don't know where to start. So I
yeah,
love it.
and I would really recommend before you ever invest or even join as an advisor to a company, understand what you're doing. Because and I'm saying that as someone who did it himself, there are a lot of things that you don't understand, and a lot of times the company that offers you that doesn't necessarily have a vested interest to tell you exactly as it is, right? Or what, for example, if you're a company right now that turns to property managers in our space and wants to raise money with
Mm-hmm.
sort of like a safe agreement or just some kind of a different type of non-standardized agreement, which I would never recommend doing. But let's say you do. In that case, the sort of like shares that you're getting are not really shares, are a promise of shares, unless you're literally getting shares within the company. You normally get what is called options. Options
Mm-hmm.
are your ability to buy shares in the future, which also come down to something a little bit more complicated, which is the difference between your exercise price and the option price. We'll get to that maybe later. That's a little bit more complicated, but that means that what you're sort of like promised right now, it's not really what you're getting. And a lot of people don't know that. And a lot of people just say, oh, I got options. Amazing. I'm an investor. You really should consult a lawyer that
Yes.
understands that. Okay. And don't just go off and sign, something that seems very exciting of, yeah, I'm an investor in a tech company right now. It's
Mm.
a little dangerous, a
Oh,
little
it's I
dangerous.
love that you said that because I've been approached by multiple companies. I say, hey, invest in us, and I sit down with them, and at some point they start getting frustrated a little bit because I ask those detailed questions, and I'm like, no, I have to know what I'm getting into.
Yes.
And it's so important. I love that you said bring in a lawyer. It doesn't matter how much the lawyer costs you. He can save you a lot more heartburn and heartache if you get someone good. Because you don't want to invest in someone
100%.
and just burn money. We're not into burning money. So I love that you said
100%.
that. So you went and when you invested, when you decided to raise funds, how did you know how much you needed? Like what did you do to go, this is what I'm going after. I know exactly what I need. So you went in ready to go.
Yeah. So just one thing I forgot to add on the previous note before I jump to this one.
Yeah.
So let's say if you do that friends and family thing, That's one option. But the typical sort of like still VC backed route,
Mm-hmm.
you can go to what is called a pre-seed round or a seed round. Those are normally the first one that you go to. A lot of companies to a pre-seed round, which is a smaller amount of money. It maybe can be several hundreds of thousands of dollars to really just, get the thing started to show some signs of traction. It doesn't necessarily have to be like, okay, we got to all of our milestones and now we can raise a huge round. It's
Mm-hmm.
just to so like have that first leap of faith. And in many cases, it's like when you have nothing. But pre-seed rounds can also be funded by VCs. There are a lot of VC venture capital funds. They're actually that's their focus is on investing in pre-seed rounds. Now, normally the pre-seed rounds are also done with that safe agreement. That's like a must when you raise money from a VC for a pre-seed round. That's the only way they will do it in most cases. So just to summarize that, so you can raise that sort of like safe type of round, whether through friends and family, or from VCs and doing what is called a pre-seed round, or you can do both. It can be sort of like a mix. You can bring friends and family, and you can bring a VC and build a sort of like pre-seed round. Now, the difference between that and companies that did immediately a seed round, which is what we did, is that a seed round is normally what is called a priced round. So this is where you go through the full, VC route. You have lawyers from both sides.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about valuation. Now it's like actual shares in the company. It's not that you're raising money now and building on the future round to be sort of like converted from that. So really, that's the main difference. Pre-seed through a safe agreement, you're normally promising so like potential terms after the next price round versus the seed round, which is immediately a price round when an evaluation of the company is set, versus the pre-seed in a safe agreement, there is no valuation to the company. And this is also something that as investors and property managers listening here, this is also something you need to bear in mind. When people tell you you'll get X amount of shares that will be worth X and Y when it's a safe agreement or when it's not a priced round, you don't really know how much you'll get. Because if, for example, they'll give you, let's say, I don't know, 100 shares, just for the sake of the math here, and the company's value is, let's say, $1 million, right? So you understand what you're getting. But in a pre-seed round, there's still no priced round set by
Mm-hmm.
VCs. There is no valuation, which means that if, for example, in the next price round, again, the company booms and
Mm-hmm.
something crazy. It's not really even realistic, but let's say they get a valuation of $100 million. That means that the options or that you were promised that will be worth, I don't know, a 10%, right, or 1%, suddenly becomes
Yep.
0.00000 something percent. So you are dependent on the valuation in the next price round, which is super, super important to remember when you're thinking about investing in a tech company that is raising this sort of like safe agreement through a very basic pre-seed round or just friends and family. So just to remember that. So back to your question and also connecting that to this point of what is a priced round and how much do we want, how do we know how much money do we need to raise?
Sorry, can I ask one
Again,
question
just
before that? Because
to
you
be
said
good.
something
Yeah.
so good that I think it has to be asked before this too. Like, how is an evaluation done on a company that does not have revenue? Because when you went and seeded, you did not have revenue yet, right? Or very small amounts. So, how does
We
it?
didn't have anything.
Okay, so I want to kind of break that open if you'll bear with me a little bit before we go into the next. How do
Sure.
you evaluate a company that doesn't have revenue?
The answer to that depends on who is valuing the company.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not a VC, not a venture capital fund or a private equity fund or whatever, normally it will be done with a very rigid, basic, calculation of the company, which is normally broken down into the bottom line of how much cash do you have, like how much money are you making, and multiple that by the average multiples in the industry. So, for example, let's say similar companies to mine, let's say if I'm doing, again, let's say I'm a property management software, right? So I will try to look if there are public companies and what's their multiple, what's their valuation multiple, which is their valuation market cap versus how much money they're making. And that will give me the multiple, let's say it's 10x, right? So based on that, I'll go back to my company and I'll see how much money I am generating right now, and I'll multiply that. Now, to your question, it's okay, what if there is no revenue, right? That's really the big question. Let's say I do have that multiple, and then I go and compare that again, like we're doing a CMA,
Yeah.
right? We're doing a comparative market
Mm-hmm.
analysis for a property valuation. Very similar thing. I take a multiple of a different company and I compare that. But when I don't have revenue, that's a problem. So in most cases, what will be done is evaluation of your assets. Okay, how much assets do you have versus how much liabilities do you have? And do you have some kind of again tech that you're offering? Do you have any other assets that can be considered? And then some kind of evaluation is considered, which would normally be in this traditional way of evaluating company very low, very low. Like you'll be surprised by how low it is. Sometimes they will just tell you it's almost nothing. But when VCs value your company, they value your company not based on how much it's valued really today. It's valued based on what's the company potential value might be in the future. So, for example, let's say I'm a company that's now going to build another note taker. Okay, there are a lot of those out there,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of those, right? It's a very competitive market. So, if I'm, for example, building a company that's not doing anything new, I don't have any unique capabilities, I'll probably wouldn't get a high valuation versus if I'll build some kind of a new type of note taker that does this and this and that, and nobody else have valuation will be higher, not because I'm generating additional money or doing something. So the VCs value you based on your future potential value. Now what they look for is the following thing. They literally have a scorecard. They literally have a scorecard of specific things they need to check. Number one, the team. Number two, the problem that you're solving. Number three, the solution that you're offering. Number four, the big or how big the market is. How much can you capture of that market? Number five is, do you have any barriers of entry? Something that no one else can sort of like, do or create or solve very easily. And number six is a lot of other stuff that are baked into the process as well. But those are like the main things. So on the team, what they're looking for is what it's called uh, founder market fit. Are these founders are the best founders to solve this problem within this market? Do they have the relevant experience needed to execute? Do they have the relevant experience to build a business? A lot of folks, and especially in the tech world, you have a lot of founders that never opened a business, like literally just the technicalities of opening a business because they came from maybe from the technical side of things. They were a software developer. So do they have what it needs to really succeed? So again, founder market fit. That's the first thing. Then on the problem side is how big the problem is. Is it really something that hurts businesses? Is it something that really has a major impact that when solved can generate a lot of revenue when it's solved because it solves a strong problem and it's not another nice to have tool,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like if the problem is big enough, then we technically also have what is called a problem solution market fit potentially. And that brings you to the third part of what is the solution you're providing? Is the solution that you're offering the market really solves the problem? And this is where, again, really gets reinforced on the fact on whether it's a nice to have tool or whether it's something that is a must have tool. This is where things really get a lot more defensible, as VCs call it. And lastly, the market. How big is the market, and how can you calculate the amount of revenue that you can capture within a market? And this is where things can get really mathematical, like because you can't just say, okay, let's say if I'm going after the property management space, I can't just say I'm going after the property management space and my total market is I don't know X amount of billions of dollars, which is all the rent collected
Yeah.
from properties. Am I tapping into that revenue from the rents as a SaaS company, or maybe am I tapping more into something else? And like what type of budget am I actually sort of like touching as the company that's going to charge money for this platform? And then you have different approaches. You have a top down approach to calculate this, or a bottom up approach. And this really depends on what your sort of like solution is. And the more accurate you are, also the better it is for you to understand whether the market is big enough even for you to start. So you really need to understand before you go in and invest all your life in it, because maybe the market is not big enough. And that's why it's so important to be so accurate with these calculations, because you might just understand that you shouldn't go into it and maybe think of something else.
I like that. I like that the market, because a lot of people will inflate these numbers. And like if you have someone coming to you to invest, you need to really strategically look at those numbers that they're giving you. Like you said at the very beginning, they don't always have the best of interest to tell you what's really going on. So when you decided to go in the market and say, hey, this is the market share that we're trying to grasp, how did you find that number? Because you said you can't go after the rent. Did you take all the property managers out there? Did you take all the landlords out there? What did you do to get the number to be able to present that to the VCs?
Yeah, so it's a lot of number crunching, that's for sure. And one of our biggest problems is the fact that in our space, in the SFR space, we really don't have data. We don't know how many total third-party property managers out there out of the total 310,000 registered property managers in the United States. If you don't know that, how can you crunch the numbers? How many of them are actually managing single family versus multifamily or commercial or any other asset class? And also, we don't have that data. So how can you get to it? And lastly, other data points. Okay, how many transactions also are being done every year, when it comes to investment properties versus traditional home buyers? There's also very not that accurate data sets on that. So in many cases, when you're in that situation and you don't have just a basic report that you can go to and this is the market size, you'll need to create something that is customized. So in our case, it was really, again, understanding how many third-party property managers out there, right? And of those third-party property managers, how much market share do we think we can capture, right? And this is where it gets to a very structured framework that is called TAM, SAM, SOM. So TAM is total addressable market.
Okay.
So this is, for example, all the single family or all the property managers in the United States. That might include also a substantial amount of the market that we currently don't serve. So let's say, just to be, not that we ever plan to, but let's say, at some point in the future, we might adjust blanket to support commercial properties. We don't plan to, but our total addressable market can be all of the property managers in the United States, right? And then after the TAM, which is again the total addressable market, we have the SAM, which is service addressable market. So service addressable market is exactly that portion of the market that we actually go for. So out of all those property managers that include commercial, multifamily, single family, etc., the SAM will be single family rental property managers. This is the market we're going after. And then the SOM, which is the most targeted sort of like aspect of our market, which is called service obtainable market. This is what we think we can actually capture. So for example, that can be out of the single family property managers or landlords. Let's say we target only the third party property managers, which is, let's say, 36% based on the report that recently Peter Lohman and Jordan had, right? So that can be my service obtainable market. So from all property managers to single family property managers to single family third party property managers, that's sort of like my framework to really building the market size that I'm actually able to get to. And this allows you to really be critical with yourself and not just say, oh, there are 310,000 property managers. Oh, the market should be huge then. Yes, no brainer. I'm going at it.
Yeah, you gotta have a little bit more data. I love how you broke that down, because I think so many people miss those steps. Like, what's the total, but what's this? Then you break it down to the single families and the property managers of single families. But you said that we don't really have really good data on that. So how did you prepare something for your VCs if you didn't have true data?
So there is some data sources, but the problem again with them is they're not necessarily accurate. So when you think about, again, registered property managers, you have one source that says it's 310,000, the other one says it's 260,000. It's like It's
All over
immense.
the place. I've researched it. It's all over the
Yeah,
place.
like nobody knows, and it's crazy. But you take an average, for example,
Hmm.
right? Like that's the best you can do to be, or you take a range and you say this is the conservative assumptions, this is the average assumption, and this is the optimistic assumption, which can also put some, more, I would say, caution into the calculation. And then on, again, the number of single family property managers, also it's really difficult to understand. So sometimes you need to um, take other types of data sets and extrapolate from them, a potential assumption. So let's say we have the number of multifamily units in the United States and the number of single family units. So they bring a total of rental units, right? So we can assume that, if this is the amount of units here and this is the amount of units there, their potential representation in terms of the percentages that might be also similar in terms of how many property managers serve that. So let's say if it's 60-40, so maybe out of those property managers, maybe 40% manage also single family, right? So that's one way to do it. Again, in our case, by the way, I'm giving this example because we used something different. We had a different market size, but this is just a very good example that we all are familiar with. So after I get to that, again, Peter Lohman and Jordan recently announced this new report that was actually a report based on what is called the iceberg report, if I remember correctly, that was actually done in 2017. Like that's the most updated like data source that we had about the number of residential property managers that are doing third party in the
Wow.
single, so like in the single family space. So you had a data point, but it's not that accurate. So you take what you can, you provided disclaimers on what else is out there, but there is something to work with. You'll just have to really crunch the numbers and sometimes think of different angles to tackle it, because that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is that you can also just understand, okay, my business model, let's say I'm a brokerage, right? So I'm charging a commission of every property. My commission is 3%. The average property price in the United States is, let's say, $400,000. So I know that I can take 3% of every property that I sell, or $400,000. And now let's calculate how many transactions are done every year. This is something I can pull. So this is my total addressable
Hmm.
market. Then I can maybe do the service addressable market. I can make it like a geography. Let's say I'm focused only on California because I'm a brokerage in California. I cannot do transactions elsewhere. And then out of the number of transactions in California, I can calculate my more service obtainable market, which is how much of the transactions in California I can capture. So this is also sort of like a bottom up, or again, a top down approach as we did before, that you can get to those numbers. But it's a
So,
lot of number
yeah,
crunching.
it's a lot of number crunches, and I think it can become overwhelming for so many people. So you're really knowledgeable at it right now, Lior, and you've done so much. Were you this knowledgeable at it when you started this company, or has this been a learning process for you?
I'm learning every day. Like I'm learning even today. I don't think I have the answers, all the answers. I definitely don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I always say I want to be the stupidest person in the room so I can, learn and understand what I'm not doing right. So I can definitely say that I didn't know everything. On the data side, I did have a lot of this data because in the previous company that I worked for, I started as their head of acquisitions. So this is technically a data type of position, because what I did is I was in charge of our investment due diligence, meaning analyzing which markets to go to, which land to buy in those markets, understanding future trends, understanding the market and macro and micro as part of the everything we're doing. So I'm not, I would say, foreign to data. Data is my thing. This is what I love. I'm a spreadsheet guy. I love spreadsheets. I love data analysis. I love analyzing markets. That's my thing. So a lot of this thing was already in the palm of my hands. So for example, that iceberg report was when I was still back in that company. That was something that I also referenced a lot just when talking with people about the industry. So definitely I had a lot of that, but the whole VC route was a thing that was new to me. So even though in that previous company I raised almost $200 million, so raising money is not foreign to me, But raising money from real estate investors and real estate funds is different from raising from VCs. It's a different methodology, it's a different process, it's a different perspective. So I definitely learned a lot as I went through this process. And I would say I probably had way more question marks and things that I didn't know than what I did know when I started this. But this is where your capability as a company, as a tech company that's going to be a VC-backed company, this is where capability of bringing the right people to surround you makes difference. So we before we raised our seed round from those venture capital funds, we also brought in a substantial amount of angel investors. Each one was the sort of like number one in their industry, and we brought in one from every industry. We had someone who is one of the largest cybersecurity companies in the world. We had someone who is one of the largest single family rental funds in the United States, their chairman. We had someone who was the senior vice president of product of one of the largest companies in the world as well. So like we had someone from every function, which whether it's product, real estate, funds, software development, and pretty much everything else, that they were there to support us as investors in the company, but also as leaders in their field. Folks who raised hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in the past from VCs, folks who already built and sold multiple venture capital backed companies. So our smartest thing was not having all the answers, is surrounding us by the people who had all the answers.
I love that you said that. But my next question is, and I know the listeners are saying the same thing, how did you find those people? Because, and how did you know? Find one, but how did you know they were the right fit? Because so many people will talk a big game. And especially now with social media and everything, let's be honest here, everybody talks a really big game. But what did you do to first find them? And then what did you do to make sure they were the right fit?
The answer to that is number one, there is a framework and a technique for that. But the other answer is also sheer luck and thanks to God. Like literally, I'm a true believer in God. I think, there are a lot of things that are happening to you when you do good things. So we were fortunate actually to have a lot of our investors, angel investors in the company that were part of that seed round. They actually just, somehow we stumbled upon them like through mutual connections, and it sort of like grew together. A lot of our angel investors are friends. They know each other, so they connected one another. And really, I think the most I don't know if to say underutilized or underrated, but something that a lot of founders in the tech space don't understand is how much that is also a people business. We always think, oh, these are like VCs and investors, and people get scared and they forget one simple thing. People just want to work with people they have fun with. Like, and if you are a person that, I'm as an investor, let's say I'm an angel investor. If you are a person that I can see myself, having drinks with and having fun with, that probably will be one of the biggest drivers for me to invest in you. Of course, you'll need to have a great product, a great opportunity, etc. But that will be one of the most important reasons for me to invest in you. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand. So because of the fact that we've built a lot of great relationships, we were able to get to a lot of good people. So again, that's like on the luck and, the help from God that really just brought these people to us. But it did come with a technique in place. So what we've done, we've built sort of like a target list. We've gathered, there are different lists out there, online that you can find, like angel investors in the United States, or angel investors here and there, VC funds in this country, private equity funds. Like there are lists out there. You can get them. It's not a big challenge to get them. But then when we got them, we started filtering, and we started like literally doing an analysis on each one. I'm talking about hundreds, if not thousands of people, and trying to understand, have they ever invested in a prop tech company? How many investments did they make? Are notable and successful companies? Who they are connected to? Then we went into their LinkedIn and Facebook pages to see if we have any mutual connections. And after we've sort of like marked the people that we would love to work with, and we mapped out all of our mutual connections on LinkedIn and Facebook. And Facebook is the most important thing, because on Facebook, you normally add your friends.
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn, you just add everybody. It's like everybody's a friend of everybody on LinkedIn, right? So Like if you want to get to the right people that will introduce you to the people you want to get to, check if they're friends on Facebook. So after we've mapped that, then we reached out to all of these potential people that could introduce us to them and ask them, how close are you to them? And can you set up a meeting? And that is the goal. You need to get a meeting. After that, it's a different process, but you need to get to that point that people are agreeing to meet with you. So once that is done, that's how you get the process started. But the cool thing is that once you start this process, a lot of them will start introducing you, like the investors themselves. If they like you and if they see something that is interesting here, they will introduce you to a lot of their friends, a lot of people that are also very, well respected in the industry. And that's what happened to us. We started with just a few, and suddenly, like, we were surrounded by so many angel investors that heard about us and wanted to talk with us. We're like, okay, like let's meet. Suddenly the dynamic shifted from us trying to schedule a meeting with them to other people trying to get a meeting with us. And that's what you also want to get to, because that creates that FOMO, that fear of missing out on a good opportunity, on great founders that can really be a lot of fun to work with, but also can be a good opportunity for you to make a good return on your investment.
I have a question there, because all the process that you're talking about is not an overnight process, and it's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And the question I have is, because a lot of people, when they start businesses today, they're like, I want to see a result tomorrow, right? I want to go through that timeline from the moment that you said you wanted to start this company. When did you actually see where you started getting paid, if you don't mind me asking that question?
Sure. I would say it was at least a year and a half or 2 years.
So it's the long game. When you're going into SaaS, it's not something that's going to be like, hey, I'm going to start getting money. Because you start taking money from that company too early, that company is not going to have anything. So you waited about a year and a half to start paying yourself?
Yes, because the company, it's a yes and no answer, because there wasn't really still a company. Normally, what is called in the startup journey, the ideation phase. This is where you think about, I want to build something. And if you want to really do it right, you have to devote all the time that you can in this ideation phase, which in many cases, this is the point where you maybe already quit your job, or you're doing it while you're doing what you're doing. And then it's like half baked. But I know a lot of founders that quit their job and gave themselves 12 months to go through a thorough ideation phase, in which at the end of, they either go in and raising funds or building that company, or they're going back to being employed in the field that they were working in. And but that's like very common. Like it's at least a year of just validating and making sure you're doing all these things right, so that way whenever you start it, you wouldn't waste additional precious years. So we did this whole ideation phase for almost a year and a half, while I was doing a lot of consulting work to a lot of other companies and things like that. But I left my business, which was that investment firm that I set up in Canada. I went back to Israel. I took that sort of like leap of faith. I stopped doing everything I did before that and really focused only on that for almost a year together with my partner. So for almost a year and a half, this is where we were doing this whole ideation phase, in which we were preparing for that launch. And the launch itself was that actual fundraise, that seed round that we raised. So only when we raised the seed round and started building the team, that's when we started actually being paid and pulling our salaries from. But almost a year and a half, or maybe even 2 years, like literally, pure leap of faith into the deep waters and trying to really make sure that you can fulfill this dream of yours.
Okay, so I want to ask a question. Actually, I don't think you're going to answer it for me, because I know how humble you are and I've dealt with you. So the question I'm going to ask is, how many people have come to you, or have there been, that say, Lior, I invest in you, and that's why I invested in the company? And I'm hoping you'll be honest here with me, because I know the answer, but I don't know if you'll actually say it.
I will say the thing that is not humbling, but I would say it in a way that is humbling, because it's not that
Fair.
we're that great. But in most cases, when investors invest in a company in the pre-seed or seed stage, they don't invest in the product. They invest in the founders.
100%.
They even, like, when you even show them the product, a lot of them will just tell you, man, just continue. Like this thing will change probably 100 times in the next couple of years. They know you'll go through a series of a lot of great challenges and iterations, and they just want to know that the folks who are going to execute on this can do it and can do it fast. So it's not that we were amazing and, compared to all other companies, they invested because we're amazing founders. This is normally what investors invest in these stages. They invest in the founders and their ability to execute. Of course, they have to check all the boxes, but that's sort of like the thing that should be taken for granted. Like it has to, those boxes have to be checked. Then the question, the big decisive factor is, are you the founders good enough to execute on that?
Mm-hmm.
So normally, like again, in these stages, especially if you're not generating revenue, because again, we raised our seed round, we didn't have anything. We just had a presentation, a deck. We didn't have revenue, we didn't have a product, we didn't have anything. We just had a big vision and the team. That's it. And especially in that case, there's nothing to invest in. So you invest in the people that are going to lead this company forward. So to your question, that's
Yes. The reason why I asked this is because I want the listeners to understand this. Is the reason why people invest in you and your partner is, one, you're willing to ask the questions, you are humble, and y'all work harder than almost anybody I've ever seen. And so I bring that up because it takes a lot of hard work, but it also takes someone humble that's willing to ask when they don't know and they don't know the answer. They'll figure it out. They'll go find the people that have the answers. They don't find that, oh, I have all the answers, that I'm just perfect. It's more like, hey, who do I need to find to bring around me to get the answers? And that's what
true.
creates a huge opportunity, you know?
True.
So I know I got to be respectful of your time. I think I could talk to you for hours on this, Lior. But the last couple questions I ask everybody real quick. Spitfire, what was the best advice you've ever received?
Be humble. No, no, seriously. I try to be very humble, but I wasn't that conscious of myself for many years. I was very unhumble when I was a kid, and I always wanted to be the coolest kid and the strongest and number one always. And that's like drive in me actually made me sometimes be a little bit less humble, which hurt people. So definitely the biggest advice that I got was from my commander in the Navy in the first qualifying part of the Naval Academy. It was, wait, be humble. Don't jump too fast.
I love that. What's the worst advice you've ever received?
When I was a kid, and even I would say teenager, and maybe my first years of business, there was very this predominant understanding that a business owner, business leader should be aggressive and should always have the answers and should always know what to do and what to say and like this very type of closed, strong type of figure, which is completely the wrong way it should have been done. And so again, it's not an advice, but it is something I always was like I was hearing all the time from business leaders, from bosses of mine previously, and commanders. And I think today, thank God, that whole thing is changing to a lot more receptive. I don't have all the answers. Let's understand it together, type of approach. So definitely that I'll put that in the bucket of bad
I
advice.
love that response because I would say I was told a lot of the same things that you're saying, but I think two heads are better than one, three heads are better than two, and transparency and openness with the team gets so many better ideas because they see things that the owner won't see because they're the
True.
front lines. Like it doesn't matter who's in the team, they have really good feedback. And if you can deploy a feedback system that they feel open and heard, oh, some of the best ideas will come from your frontliners. Oh,
I would
I
say even more than that. You'll be seen as way more confident when you'll act unconfident. So like when you'll say, I don't know. It takes a lot more power to say I don't know something or I don't have the answer than just spitting out something. And normally, when you show that you are open to feedback, you're open to criticism, you can say, I don't know, and let's try to understand that together. That gives you way more credit and shows that you're way more confident than the person who'll just throw something and say, like, whatever comes to mind. Like, it's way more powerful.
I love that. No, 100% agree. And to be honest, I didn't always live that way. To be honest, I had to learn that because of how other business owners talked and what they told you had to be and everything. And it took me a while, but I literally, how I always say it is the team is the rocket fuel behind the business, and they will see, and the ideas that they have are so much greater than it's definitely a new way, and I think it's the best way.
100%.
Now, one other question. What would be a book that you would recommend for our listeners to help them through this process when it comes to SaaS companies and evolving in business and all these different things that we're talking about today?
So I would actually recommend a book that I was recommended literally about an hour ago.
Oh.
By Nate too from Key Renter.
Okay.
A book that's called The Outsiders.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's about 8 unconventional CEOs and their radically rational blueprint for success. It talks about some of the largest business owners in the world, in the country, that you probably haven't heard about. Like they were the ones that were always, out there in front of the lights and, making everybody see them. But they built some of the largest, if not the most successful companies out there. And they stayed, out of the limelight and didn't want to be shining everywhere. And again, I haven't read that book, but the way Nate described it, I was like, I'm definitely going to read it because it changes everything. And literally what we talked about right now, it shows you a completely different perspective than what you're taught in terms of business management and business success, and shows you how actually going, as an outsider against the common wisdom actually brings you a lot more success and a lot more, return on your investment. So I'm excited to read this book, so I'll just recommend it to everybody as well.
I love that. But what you said right there, I want to hone in on that. So often people look within their own industry and make sure that it's only these people that give me advice. And in reality, so on my board, no one's in my industry because I want them to take an outside look in. I have people in real estate, but just a different spectrum. And it's been so eye-opening, and what has transformed this year has been insane. And I'm part of a board, and they're like, no, they have to be here and they have to understand that. I'm like, you're kind of missing the point of a board. Exactly. But I think it's amazing what you just said, because you want outsiders looking in and poking holes on what you're doing, because that's how you get the best outcome. Don't just try to get people that are doing the same thing as you, because then you're not getting
the same box.
You're in the tunnel vision, right? No, I love that. Cool. Lior, how can people find you? Because I do think you are changing the industry, and I am so incredibly excited for you and your company.
Just DM me on LinkedIn, or if you're interested in Blanket, so just visit our website at blankethomes.com, schedule a demo. But if you're interested in talking about pretty much everything else besides Blanket, as you can see, this is my passion. I love what we're doing. I love our industry. I love talking about leadership and about different business practices and strategies, or even just talking about some of the things we talked about today, fundraising, board management. Just send me a message and I'll be more than happy to chat. I think the best thing is always, I say, learn from other people's mistakes. Don't learn from yours. You don't have to learn from your mistakes. There's so much wisdom out there. So don't go at it alone. There are a lot of great people like Tiffany here as well, and a lot of other people in our industry that can really help. Just not stumble upon any mistakes and just do it right. So I'm here for you guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We appreciate you being on today.